Hello, people. How are you doing today? Well, today I come to talk to you about Silicon Valley Bank. Silicon Valley Bank just had its collapse. It could not get up the funds that it needed. Why? I don't know. They have assets, but rather than dibbling into their own accounts, I think they would rather try to sell some stocks. It seems, and they got caught by the investors. The investors backed out. As the investors backed out, it seems like it was a landslide of investors that backed out, and now the bank has been penalized for this. Oh, yeah, I have like two things I wanted to go through. So, can't explain without showing you. So, uh, first things first. Um, they said the fallout from the troubled Silicon Valley Bank could adversely impact the job market. Ooh. Um, so the job market could be impacted. Other banks were impacted uh, due due to what happened with the Silicon Valley Bank. Silvergate Capital, uh, Silvergate Capital almost lost $1 billion. Citibank lost money. Bank of America lost money. J.P. Morgan and Chase also lost money. And it says um, the four biggest U.S. banks, Citigroup, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, J.P. Morgan, collectively lost $52 billion in the market Thursday. Um, so all of the banks took a decline. It seems like some mismanagement of funds to me. Like I said, these people have assets. The owners have assets to cover the little that they needed. I think they blame it on inflation. So it's mismatch. It's greed. It's to me. It's like a mix of inflation and greed. They blame it on the Federal Reserve. Um, Upping the interest rates. What I have researched. This isn't the exact one. What's the other one? It's something on here the reason I got this one. I think because they said that they think it's gonna spike again. They think it's 2008 gonna happen again, basically. And then again, the big bank say no. They said Silicon Bank wasn't uh big enough to affect any other banks, enough for them to do what they did. All right, okay, what is Silicon Valley Bank? Silicon Valley Bank was founded in 1983. Uh, SVB specialized in banking for tech startups. It provided financing for almost half of U.S. venture-backed technology and healthcare companies. Uh, While relatively unknown outside of Silicon Valley, Silicon Valley Bank was among the top 20 American commercial banks with 209 billion in total assets at the end of the last year, according to the FDIC. And it says, why did they fail? In short, Silicon Valley Bank encountered a classic run on the bank. The longer version is a bit more complicated. Several forces collided to take down the banker. I guess the bank. uh, who owns this bank? We can go look into that also. Well, I used to own it. First there were federal government. Um, first there was the Federal Reserve, which began raising interest rates a year ago to tame inflation. The Fed moved aggressively, and higher borrowing costs sapped the momentum of tech stocks that had benefit Silicon Valley Bank. So basically, they blamed it on the inflation. I mean, the interest rates, which was blamed on the inflation. And they said that they had to raise their interest rates on the bank. So obviously, the bank probably wanted to raise their interest rates or something. And it's you know, they said it rose downhill. So, and the investors didn't want to catch it on the other end of the hill, so a lot of the investors backed out. Businesses basically, because that's a commercial bank, so they don't lend to like regular people. You have to be like, it's a specialty bank. Um, Basically like a tech company almost. Um, so basically, I just wanted to give you guys a little breakdown, basically, of what they say happened. It's a better breakdown of it on another with better numbers. So basically, I think when the bond portfolio went different. So it was like it was a high number, but from what I saw, that is about the amount of money it was different. It was about 21 billion. So I don't know, and they said that they only needed to raise 2.5 though, just to help the balance sheet out a little bit. But they wanted to sell shares. I think that was the best way for them to raise money. I don't know why they wanted to bring it public instead of doing something in house. That was beyond me. It's beyond me. It was better ways. Because they did it. They made an announcement. That's the whole thing. They made it public on Wednesday. They must have knew this was gonna happen. That's crazy. These people knew this was gonna happen before they did this. Y'all need to look at the company books in the last couple of months, man. That's crazy. Um, on Wednesday, Silicon Valley Bank announced it had sold a bunch of its securities at a loss, Mhm. and that it would also sell 2.25 billion in new shares to shore up its balance sheet. So that's crazy. That's a lot. That's a lot. It's not a little bit. Of course, that's gonna trigger panic. I mean, like, what? Like, I wouldn't put more money into y'all if y'all going backwards. Fuck y'all. And that far too. If y'all took a little drop, man, people like, all right, that's a little hit. It'll bounce back. But this is ridiculous. Everybody loves. And this is the thing. They say the FDIC typically sells or fails bank assets to other banks using the proceeds to repay debtors whose funds weren't insured. I mean depositors, my bad. I'm not talking about debtors. Depositors. So if your money was in the bank and it wasn't insured. But my whole thing is I can't is whose money wasn't insured. I thought it's automatically insured. See, that's the whole I guess it depends on the account or how you put your money in the bank. But just to let people know, it is another little thing that the FDIC, it was uh it was somewhere, but the FDIC also said that if um if your money, oh, that's why it has. So the FDIC and an independent government agency that insures bank deposits and oversees financial institutions says all insured depositors will have full access to their insured deposits by no later than Monday morning. It said it would pay uninsured depositors an advance dividend within the next week on their depository money. So basically your money was insured like it was supposed to be through the FDIC. So thank the FDIC. So whenever y'all see that at the bottom of the screen, just know y'all should thank the bank for having insurance. I guess it's not only for the bankers, it's for you guys also. And for that being said, I'm about to mute my mic. Got a little video for y'all. Let's see how this go. Nope. Damn. It's still going. How about this one? Nope. Nope. Hold on, man. I'm trying to move the mic. I'm trying to mute the mic without muting the mic. Um, Kill it without killing it. Fuck it, we can kill it.
Let's add a little spice to the stew with Gerard Cassidy, head of U.S. Bank Equity Strategy and large cap bank analyst at RBC Capital Markets. Gerard, welcome. What do you make of today, specifically in the banking sector, the Silicon Valley Bank and other things? How concerning is all of this to you?
Thank you for having me on the program, Tyler. And always concerned when you see stocks move so dramatically like you saw today. But as some of your colleagues have pointed out, this is a unique situation with a few banks. When you think about Silicon Valley in particular, you have to remember in 2019, before the pandemic, the company had about $71 billion in assets. As of the end of 22, it had 211 billion. Its securities portfolio went from 29 billion to 128 billion. They were the sweet spot for what we saw in the equity markets during the pandemic. As you all recall, the IPO market in 2021 was off the charts. So this company, unfortunately, had so much money to put to use. They put it into bonds. As you guys talked about, the yields went the other way, and their funding. This is the critical part, and this is where I'm glad some of your panelists have talked about this. This bank is different because they don't have low-cost consumer funding like most of our banks do. So when you look at the Bank America or you look at a regional bank like M&T or Fifth Third, these companies have 40 to 50 to 60% of funding from small consumer deposits, less than $250,000. At Silicon Valley, that number was 2.5%. So they have more interest-sensitive money that needs to have rates paid higher to keep that money, and that's tough when the bond market's doing what it's doing.
So to put a point on it, compared with the banks you just mentioned, their source of funds is what?
Very good question, Tyler. The source of funds for the traditional bank is consumer deposits. And think about how long it takes to build consumer deposit. It takes decades. And when you think about our checking accounts that we have at our banks, we're not going to leave our banks with our checking accounts. And especially for the deposits that are less than $250,000, think of mom and pop, grandma and grandpa deposits with $5,000 in them. Those are gold in this kind of rate environment. And Tyler, it's been 15 years since we had to look at the right side of the balance sheet at deposit mix, and the banks with the good deposit mix, and Silicon Valley didn't have that. Those banks are okay. And this sell-off was unfortunate. It was indiscriminate.
So Gerard, it went across the money center banks too. So why did this happen, and especially the regional banks, even though, again, I pointed out just the percentage weighting of what SVB would do to that entire index if it sold off 60%. But are we imputing a bad securities portfolio on a lot of these regionals? But how about the biggest banks with the best balance sheets in the world?
Yep, no, you're right. And I think what the market is worried about is, as you guys talked about with the employment numbers coming tomorrow, we have to make sure the Federal Reserve gets this inflation under control. And if we're sitting here in 6 months and inflation is still at 5-6%, we're not going to see a terminal rate of 5.5%. Therefore, if rates go up much higher, then these bond problems become more of a problem for everybody. But we have to remember that the banks are not forced to sell these bonds. Most of these are governments and agency bonds, and they are not credit risk, but you need the funding, that right side of the balance sheet, to ride it out, and the money centers can.
Two legends in one night, Tyler Matherson and Gerard Cassidy. So I want to take you down memory lane, Gerard, if you allow me to. September 17th, 2019. We don't talk about it. We probably need not talk about it, but the overnight repo market blew up, and I'm choosing that word. And there's some signs out there that maybe the reverse repo market, my question to you is, that to me was the beginning of what we saw subsequently in 2020. Any concerns in the repo market and what it might be telling us?
Guy, not yet, and thank you for your compliments. I would say not yet. Certainly, we're watching it carefully. You know how large the reverse repo market has become with the Federal Reserve doing what it's doing by paying higher rates of deposit there. But so far, it seems to be pretty much under control compared to what you said in 2019. Now, Guy, I'll go back a little further. If you go back to 1980, this is the problem that the savings banks had in New York City is exactly what you saw today with Silicon Valley.
Who's got a comment or an idea here? Jeff, jump in.
Yeah, so my comment would be that I totally agree with what Gerard is saying relative to the dynamics of all of this. I mean, I think it's more of a macroeconomic issue more broadly for the banks, versus something here that's going to translate to some problem, across all of them. And I do think that today was a little bit of an overreaction. I guess what I would want to know from Gerard is, thinking about the macroeconomy going forward, how do you think that then translates into bank performance more broadly outside of what we're talking about today? Broad credit exposure, things of that nature.
Jeff, you put your thumb right on it. It really, it was unfortunate, but we'll get through this, in my opinion. And it's really all about credit. Every time we've gone through a credit cycle, if it turns out to be really bad, that's when the banks suffer the most. We all remember 08, 09. 1990 was another tough one. 01, not as much. But here, this is the key part about this inflation number, because if the Fed has to continue to raise the Fed funds rate to 7.5%, maybe 8%, because they cannot get inflation under control, we will go into a hard landing. That means much bigger credit problems. So to your point, Jeff, that is the macro call. We're not there. We're not suggesting that. We think they're going to get to the terminal rate at 5. we'll get somewhat of a soft recession. The other thing too is that since the financial crisis, the banks have to go through this stress test every year, which is extremely difficult. So our banks, and I think you guys touched on it, they're better capitalized, they have more liquidity, and credit is very strong. And so when it comes, they'll be able to weather the storm. But that is what we're watching right now. We're not ready to jump off the ship on the banks to say get out of them because of credit. That's too early. But that is what we are watching.
I don't know what to say about it. They said don't get out the banks. It is what it is. If y'all ain't gonna give us the money, we damn sure get it. No, but they said the consumer banks really don't have to worry about it. Like they said, that's just like more of a commercial bank. That's their fault. They don't want they didn't want to dibble and dabble in the other end. That should have been y'all life, bro. Y'all should have did like 50-50. Yeah, tripping. I think a lot of people probably did want to bank at Silicon Valley Bank just because of the name. But, oh well, change the name now. They might keep it the same. Whoever get it, whatever. It said some people was gonna stand firm with the bank and see what happened. A lot of people lose their job behind this shit. It's crazy. But that's the Silicon Valley Bank. It took a topple over the weekend. Really last week, but you know, it is what it is. Just hope it don't affect your bank as much, and hope these banks get everything under control as far as dealing with the Federal Reserve. I hope the Federal Reserve get everything under control. Start sending letters to England and shit. You understand me? Send some kites to England. Hey man, we suffering over here. What you got going on? But anyway, until next time, y'all hold it down. Stay safe. Hope y'all endeavors be more prosperous than Silicon Valley's. And yeah, just know that the bank's going through it too. Y'all going through it, they going through it too. So